www.ekoradio.com. Ekoradio.com amplía sus fronteras digitales. Por eso te invitamos a que te suscribas a nuestro canal de YouTube, Ekoradio. En donde encontrarás los mejores programas, el mejor contenido y podrás escuchar nuestra señal online www.ekoradio.com, la vitrina del talento latino. Ekoradio.com amplía sus fronteras digitales. Por eso te invitamos a que te suscribas a nuestro canal de YouTube, Ekoradio. En donde encontrarás los mejores programas, el mejor contenido y podrás escuchar nuestra señal online www.ekoradio.com, la vitrina del talento latino. La mejor música, el mejor contenido y los mejores programas en la mejor Ekoradio, otra forma de hacer radio. Ey, Ekoradio con K. Ekoradio.com, otra forma de hacer radio. Síguenos en nuestras redes sociales, en Twitter e Instagram como @Ekoradio y en Facebook como Ekoradio. Ekoradio, otra forma de hacer radio. Estás escuchando ekoradio.com, la vitrina del talento latino.
Bueno, bienvenidos a esta nueva emisión de un programa muy especial que arrancamos hoy todos los martes aquí en Ekoradio. Les doy la bienvenida en español porque estamos emitiendo desde Bogotá, Colombia. Bienvenidos a Alternative Holistic Medicine, y es un programa que vamos a hacer 100% en inglés. Yo hago la bienvenida en español. Le doy la bienvenida al doctor Gamal Páez y a nuestra presentadora invitada hoy, Ana María Cataño, del Instituto Nórdico, aquí en Ekoradio. Entonces, doctor, Ana María, ustedes toman la vocería en inglés. Bienvenidos. Ana María, bienvenida a este tu primer programa como presentadora invitada.
Listeners from Australia, North America, Europe, and all over the world. This is Ekoradio. Today we will welcome to Dr. Gamal Páez, a renewed doctor and surgery specialist and alternative therapist. Today we will start to the first program of a series of interviews in which the experienced Dr. Gamal Páez will be talking to us about the Egyptian Reiki, a healing system that is reborn in modern times to help people heal in a sort of situations. Today we start with the program, and our first broadcast will focus on the historical context of the Egyptian Reiki and the base of this Asian history. So please, thank you and welcome to the show, Dr. Gamal.
Thank you, Ekoradio, and thank you for having me here today. I'm so pleased and so happy to finally have a space where I can share all my experience, my thoughts, and particularly in this area of the Egyptian Reiki, which is one of the most used healing techniques that I have used for many years and that I have changed my life into a positive way. So thank you, and I think I'm gonna start from a little bit of my roots, where I come from, and what is the connection with Egyptian Reiki. So my connection with ancient Egypt comes from my birth. I was born in Colombia, in South America, but my paternal roots comes from the Middle East, from actually the Palestinian-Israeli region, and also from Lebanon. So I grew up with Colombian customs, but I was always connected with the culture of the Middle East through my family culinary traditions and also social traditions during gatherings where we all share as a family. Since I was little, I found everything related to ancient history very interesting interested, especially with ancient Egypt. And particularly when I arrived to Australia about a decade ago, I began my studies in natural and complementary therapies, and that was a big step. And during that process, I also discovered the magnificence of ancient Egyptian history and Egyptian Reiki. I've met beautiful people that were ambassadors of this culture. I met two of my most experienced teachers who taught me this beautiful technique. And before meeting them, I always had visions in my meditations, when I was at temples, at pyramids, and when I was interacting with beings, half men, animal beings, in particular with those of, head of a cat or a lion in a human body. And I was a bit, what is this? It was the first time it was happening. So after having several times these type of visions, I decided to search online, and I found out that actually these beings were present in many ancient civilizations, and some of those visions that I had were from ancient Egypt. So it was from there that I discovered, through the study of Egyptology as a hobby, that there were Egyptian gods that look exactly the same as those in my visions. And it was when I began my path as an Egyptian Reiki healer, and later as an Egyptian Reiki master.
So amazing. Can we say that Egyptian Reiki can be like a style of life?
Do you mean like a lifestyle, or
like a lifestyle? Yes. Yes, because you said about energy, and you should be like in a good way to get these connections.
Exactly. Well, once you learned this type of healing technique, it becomes part of your life, of course. And then if you are a healer, you can actually find it useful in every sort of situation. So it also becomes part of yourself. And the most beautiful thing about this technique is that actually help you to heal yourself from the inside, and find you that connection that actually you may have with ancient Egypt. So through this learning of this system, I found that some of my lost memories from different past lives that I had in ancient Egypt, and that is beautiful, and it's very sometimes overwhelming. It could be because you are healing as well some of those memories, but with the activation of that energy within you, and in my particular case within me, it helped me to expand energetically and learn and rediscover who I was from the past. So, and try to make that connection with the person that I am right now, and how could I use that potential as a healer. And now that I'm a doctor as well, that's a very important tool that I can use in my daily practice.
Okay. So we start with the basic concepts of the history of ancient Egypt. What can you tell us about this?
Well, Ari, I think it is important to have like a very good historical contextual background about what is happening in ancient Egypt and in that area of the world. So first of all, the Egyptian civilization flourished next to one of the most important rivers of the world, the Nile River. So it's one of the longest rivers of the world, one of the most important rivers. And during 3 millennia, this great civilization of ancient Egypt, also known as the civilization of the land of the Kemet. So the Kemet was called also the Black Land. Some histories or historical records says that this is the name because there were black African American people in this country, but it was also because it was a fertile land. So it was such a fertile land that any place around or side by side of this river, it was flourishing with lots of vegetation, and so people can actually grow their own food, and it was important for a civilization to flourish to have these conditions. So this land that developed on the banks of this great river was the ancient civilization of ancient Egypt. So, we have to also remember that Egypt ruled by a semi-divine figure, which was the pharaoh. So this all-powerful monarch was at the top of the political system and supported his power over the vizier and the priest. So the pharaoh, one of the most important role of the pharaoh was to rule the land, but also guide the people. And it was his duty or her duty to show them the path, to give them the spiritual path as well, and also be a leader for them. So this is important because in all the history, we had so many dynasties in ancient Egypt, and each pharaoh or each leader play an important role. So we could always say that a pharaoh could be also like a prime minister today, or a president, who was the person in charge of rule the country and guide the people of the country. So administratively, Egypt was divided also in nomos or hespot, that were not but provinces that had their own capital, but also they worship their own gods. So according to the area of Egypt, there were different gods who were worshipped by different people, and of course according to the time as well, and to which pharaoh was the ruler, there were different worshipments of different gods. So the land of the pharaohs was also the country of the two lands and the two shores, so that geographically it is divided into two parts of Egypt. It was the lower Egypt to the north, where the ancient Egyptians called it the Tamehu, which means land flooded, and the Nile Delta area, and the upper Egypt. So there were two different parts of Egypt, and that's how everything started. But then during the first periods of history, there was a unification of this part of Egypt. So at the point where the two areas meet, one of the great capitals was located, and this is the city of Memphis. So this is a bit of a context so that people can actually locate the importance of this ancient civilization.
And what about the animals? Because I know that there has a really good connection with animals and cats and dogs, and the gods has some relationship with that. I'm not sure if I am in it.
Exactly. Well, yeah, you're right. So there were, as I was saying, there were different gods and goddesses, and they were depicted as half human and half animals, and they used to have the head of cats. The heads were made of of the shape of an animal, such as cats, dogs, crocodiles, ivies as well. And one of the most important goddess or goddesses was the goddess Sekhmet, and the other one was Bastet, which were actually lioness and cat goddesses. So they were protectors, important for the temples and houses. They were very respected, and they were also worshipped. And particularly, for example, Sekhmet was the goddess of medicine, of healing, and also the goddess of war. And in addition to this, we have other gods, such as the god Thoth, who was depicted as a god with the head of an ibis, which was a very common type of bird in the Nile River. And also we also have the dog-headed god who was Anubis. It actually was a chacal. The chacal was a type of dog that was very common in these areas of the world, and he was actually one of the goddesses who welcomed the soul when they started the journey of the afterworld, so after death. So they had an important value in the whole history and also in the whole cosmology of ancient Egypt.
So great. What about the chronological history?
Yes, so nowadays, archaeological findings have kind of like shown a new way of, or have given us clue of how was ancient Egypt divided through time. So if we divide it through periods of time, we have the pre-dynastic period, which is the most unknown time and the most oldest one. And here is the appearance of the first Egyptian kingdoms and the appearance of in Lower Egypt and their subsequent unification. And the first pharaoh was Narmes or Menes. So here is where the whole civilization started, which was around 3,000 years BC. So that's almost 5,000 years ago. Some archaeologists actually said that the Egyptian or the ancient Egyptian civilization was even older. So roughly between 3,000 to even 7,000 or 8,000 years before Christ. So that's a very long time. It's one of the oldest civilizations of the world.
Yes.
After this period, we have the Old Kingdom. And it is the time of the consolidation of the state and where the Great Pyramids were built. So we have the Pyramid of Djoser, Cheops, Khafre, and Menkaure. And then after this, we have the Middle Kingdom. And the Middle Kingdom, there was unity and the power of the pharaohs returned. So this is an important period of consolidation. Then after this, we have the second intermediate period where the Hyksos ruled much of Egypt. So Egypt was also invaded by surrounded civilizations such as the Hyksos. In the New Kingdom, which is roughly between 1,500 and 1,000 BC, Egypt is reunited and strengthened. It is the time of the pharaohs like Ramses II or Tutankhamun or Nefertiti. So this New Kingdom was a very important period of, and cultural flourishment and also science and architecture. So after this, we started with the late periods. And this is where the ancient Egyptian civilization start divided, and it suffered the Assyrian invasions, the Persian invasions, the conquest of Alexander the Great, and just around 30 BC and 600 AD, Egypt became a Roman province, and its identity was eventually blurred. During the Middle Ages, no one was able to read hieroglyphic writing anymore. So here we can see how the empire flourished and the whole civilization as well. And so it's such an old civilization, to be able to stand up for almost 5,000 years. It's very outstanding and it's very exceptional. And if we compare it to nowadays to our modern society, we've just been around 2,000 years after Christ. So we still have a long way to learn, and learn from these ancient civilizations, such as ancient Egypt, that could help us to understand better the way we live in this planet.
Okay, so nowadays, if I go to Egypt, it's not so common to find this Egyptian Reiki, or is it popular nowadays or no?
Well, you may find healers and you may find different healing traditions in Egypt, but because we are living in a modern society, the way we see things is different, and nowadays we separate, healing from our spirituality path. There is a huge division, Okay. So as a doctor nowadays, you have to follow a system. It is very difficult to integrate, these alternative and complementary therapies such as Egyptian Reiki that can actually help to heal the soul into the physical body. So if you go to a hospital, most of hospitals, they treat your physical illness, your physical symptoms, but not many of them, just a few of them, and in very remote areas of the world, they may also treat your spiritual self. So in ancient Egypt, they consider healing part of the spiritual evolution and also personal development, and also an important aspect of health. So this is the topic that we're going to talk about in our next conference, our next interview, and it's about how was the healing in ancient Egypt and how did they use it, because there is a lot of contradictions and things like that, but they were all united in one. So if you travel now, it is very difficult to find actually someone that can give you, a traditional healing as it was done in ancient Egypt. But you may still travel around, go to different places, temples that can actually help you to reopen yourself energetically and spiritually, which can also help you to heal. So that's another option.
Okay, but just to be clear, it's not like our religion. It's something different.
No, it's very different, exactly.
Why?
So this is
Why?
a tradition. Because our religion it's a whole different concept. When we talk about our religion, it has different traditions, different and initiations, and it's a very it's been for a very long period of time, and is very structuralized. So so you have the head of the commander-in-chief of this of this religion particularly. But remember that in ancient Egypt, there was two different periods, but most of them they were polytheistic. So they have different gods and goddesses. So they have a different cosmological vision of the world. They conceive the universe as a whole creation energetically, and we were the creation of the gods. Okay, so we were experiencing a spiritual journey in this physical world. So it's very different. There was not such a cult. In ancient Egypt, in temples, people they didn't used to go and pray as we use in most religions nowadays. Temples were sacred places for the priests, the priestesses, the priesthoods, and also the pharaoh. And only the pharaoh was able to enter the temple and do the offering. So, and sometimes the pharaoh, and the big festivities of the world may share this type of of celebrations with the people of Egypt, but the families inside the homes, they have their own respect to the gods and goddesses, and they used to pay respects in their own way. But it was very different from the concept of religion that we have nowadays.
Okay, and I have another question. Can be related to yoga as in India? It can be something similar?
It could be mentioned, but remember there are different cultures. When we talk
for sure.
Exactly. We're talking about a part of the Ayurvedic medicine of the traditional Indian, culture, which is a very old one, and ancient. But when we're talking about, Egyptian Reiki, it's something different. It's a tool. It's a system that you may use for your self-healing and for healing others. But there is no a physical connection such as, in yoga. Yeah, but if we try to relate both of them with Egyptian Reiki, you're also working on your chakras. You know that in yoga we have the asanas and we have the different poses. You may open these chakras or energy centers through this physical experience. With Egyptian Reiki, you may open those centers through a spiritual experience. So different experiences, they converge and they can make, or they can have the same results or similar results.
Okay, Joe. Great. Another question: how were they socially organized in ancient Egypt?
Well, as I was said, the pharaoh was one of the most important figure. He was the bridge between the whole Egyptian people and the gods. Yeah, and then after the pharaoh, we have like a pyramid structure, social pyramid structures. We have the grand vizier, we have the head of state seal, we have the grand priest, the scribes, the military forces, the village, and the slaves. Yeah, so something that we really have to mention here is the role of the pharaoh, as I was mentioned before. He was considered the king of Egypt, and there were many through their civilization. And something that we have to remember here is that they were divided into 30 reign dynasties or families succeeding from the beginning of their history around 3000 BC. And some archaeological tests actually show that there were even older, so much more older pharaohs. So until the arrival of the Greeks in the 300 BC, but not all the pharaohs were as famous, for example, as Ramses II or the Tutankhamun. Some kings were forgotten, and this could be, for example, in the case of Akhenaten, who was the great pharaoh who changed the whole religion into the worshipment of one god who was the Atan, or the sun. So they made great things. They were responsible of build and live these temples who are like books for us, who we can actually read the past through them. So it is important also to understand that, next to the pharaoh, we have the grand priests and the different priesthoods, who they used to have all the knowledge and the wisdom of science, of healing, the preservation of traditions. So we're going to talk a bit more about this, the role of the priests, the priesthoods in ancient Egypt, because there's a special connection with healing and healing systems, and they work together with the pharaoh in the different rituals, in the construction of the monuments, temples, and in the construction of the tombs as well. So they need to have a connection, It's not like nowadays that for the construction of a city, you call an engineer and an architect. In ancient Egypt, sometimes the engineer or the architect may also have a role as a priest or priesthood. So they used to build their structures with, astronomical proportions and also a spiritual relations with the stars and the gods and goddesses. So this is something important because they, as you can see, they connect everything. They connected their spirituality with the engineering, with science, with maths, with healing. So everything was connected and everything was sort of treated in a one way.
Yes, we can see that they were very clever people.
Exactly.
And I have to ask you for sure, have you ever been to Egypt?
Well, I was meant to travel this year, but my trip was postponed because of the whole
coronavirus.
Yes, so I have had the chance of studying a lot of all the history, Egyptology, and as I said, I'm very close related because of my family traditions to the Middle East. Mm-hmm. So it is something that I have actually included in what I need to do, and it's important to actually have that space and of course travel in the right time and in the right period of time, because energetically this is not the right moment to do this type of trips. We also have to look after ourselves and try to preserve our life as much as possible. So but eventually we will be doing many travelings as well. We are trying to organize a group of people to travel with me and do some of the initiations of Egyptian Reiki in Egypt too.
Wow, this sounds fantastic. And finally, what can you rescue as a great legacy of the ancient Egypt to the humanity of modernity nowadays?
Exactly. Well, so one of the most important legacies that the ancient Egyptian civilization gave us was the writing, and it was such an important and in something that we need to acknowledge, because we learn so much of the culture and tradition through the hieroglyphs writing and the hieratic writing as well. So it is impressive how they actually put in symbols all their expressions and the way they communicate and the way they relate to. They were so structured in the way they relate to people and do things. So always preserving something that they call the ma'at or the balance. Yes. So so it is important also to acknowledge the way they question and answer the origin of man and the universe. You know, the cosmogony and cosmology that they have of the creation of the world. You know, when Aten created Geb and Nut, which was one of the most important gods and goddesses, the earth and the sky, and how Nut and Geb managed to have the 4 children, Osiris, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. The creation of the world actually, according to them, came from the Nun, from the primordial water. So this is important, you know. Also, something to acknowledge the knowledge in architecture and mathematics, which is amazing, you know. So it is something that actually we feel nowadays, and it's been preserved. And it's a witness of history and the knowledge in medicine and healing, which is incredible as well. They performed the first surgeries, and they managed to give antidotes to different illnesses, and they managed the illness also as a spiritual affection, and the vision of seeing death as another step in life and the importance of preparing from the birth. So they also acknowledge that we are spiritual beings, that we are making a transition, and then after this life we have to go to a different space and place of where our soul can rest. And finally, there are many representations of the divinity in many gods and goddesses, and their important role in the creation and contribution of wisdom and knowledge to humans. So, you know, they're always trying to preserve the features of the divinity within the gods and goddesses, and also they were also like something that the people may follow, you know, and admire, so that actually they could do good deeds. You know, despite there were different difficult times in ancient Egypt, something that we need to rescue is that close connection with the spiritual selves, and how they thought that it was important to have a balanced life and rightfulness lifestyle, you know, respecting others and treating well others, in order for you to be in a place in the future after death where you actually was resting and your soul was recovering, you know. So whatever we do in this life, it could actually affect the afterlife. So people needed to understand this concept of the preservation of the balance and the good deeds. So that's about it.
And you say something about the stars and the planet and the connection between Egyptian agents and the universe. So the astrology, we can say that it comes from ancient Egypt, can be?
It could be, but there were also other civilizations that consider astrological phenomena as very important in their lives. So we have, you know, the Persians. We also have the Sumerians, which it was said that they were even older than the Egyptians. We also have, you know, the South American cultures as well, the traditional, you know, Mayans, the Incas, and also in Asia, you know, the first Asians. Civilizations and the Vedic traditions as well in India. So I think that around that time in the world there were different civilizations in the planet, and they were all connected somehow. You know, they had a special connection with astrology, with the stars, with the way the universe was reacting around Earth. So ancient Egyptians considered this very important for the construction of the temples, and also for any type of, you know, of ritual that they needed to do. They were also in alignment with the stars.
Yes.
And remember that just a small parenthesis. Some of the gods and goddesses, it says that they came from the stars as well, you know, from the Orion constellation. So some of them says that some pharaohs consider that the soul actually came to Earth for a purpose, but then they need to travel back to the stars where they came from.
Wow. So that's why we cannot understand how they build the huge construction and get the reference from the sky. So for us now, it's just unbelievable.
Exactly. Yes.
And so, something that you want to tell us more about the Reiki, the Egyptian Reiki? Yes.
Something about what? Sorry.
Egyptian Reiki, because we were talking about the society and all these things.
Well, yes. I think in the next interview we're gonna talk a bit more about the healing. Yes. But just a brief introduction for our next meeting is that in the next meeting we're going to talk about how the healing in ancient Egypt was considered an important tool for the soul to achieve these states of peace, of harmony and balance, and how was all these traditions treated in temples, who were in charge of healing. And the Egyptian Reiki wasn't called Egyptian Reiki at those times. They had different names. There was just a system or a tool that was used by priests and priesthoods for any sort of spiritual development and also healing. So it was something that was treated with a lot of respect, and that people may use it for their own spiritual development. Remember that not all the people and not of ancient Egypt were able to connect with this energy and the gods. Just some of the most close social members close to the pharaoh and to the priest were actually initiated into this type of healing. But now we have the blessings of have this type of healing system available for anyone. So this is something that was not able to do in ancient Egypt. Not everyone was able to learn this type of healing or connect to their spiritual self for healing. So nowadays, in the modern world, people is going to be able to connect with this energy for healing finally, for helping and healing themselves and also for helping healing others. That's the big purpose. The big purpose is to share this knowledge so that can people learn to heal others and change for good their perspective about the world and about what's happening right now.
Okay, so in that time it was forbidden? It was just for Pharaoh?
It was not forbidden, but it was only strictly used for particular purposes, and it was managed by the hierarchy side society in ancient Egypt. So the most educated people, who were the priests, the priestesses, and also the pharaoh, because there has to be a spiritual connection with this system in order to be used. Yes, so not everyone was able to learn it. So the purpose of this reborn of this healing technique is to actually being able to be with every person and also help them to rediscover their spiritual self, to grow, to learn, to heal. So if it is something that can actually help people, why not spread it, and so everyone can have it and everyone can use it for a good purpose, So that's something that we need to rescue from the past, and it's something that we need to put it on practice. And right now, people in the world need a grounded point energetically and spiritually.
Yes, I want to ask you, what do you think about our society now?
Our society.
We need a strong medicine to get a better energy, or what do you think about with all your knowledge?
I think that the answers are within ourselves. it is not a medicine that we take and we heal. It's an internal process that we need to open up. It is like a book that is being closed. We need to open up this book, open up all those secrets that we have inside, all those gifts. We have gifts, we are uniques. And the Egyptian Reiki can actually help you to open up those gifts, and making that change in consciousness. That is an important thing. The way we see things, the way we act needs to change, because as you can see right now, what's happening with the pandemic, it is an imbalanced society. There is no order. There is no justice. So if you don't have money, or you're wealthy, then you're not able to get the best of healthcare. So, and sometimes this actually was happening the same in ancient Egypt. We are making the same mistakes that ancient Egyptians did in the past. But the thing is that if we are here and we were born, as in my case, to bring back this healing, is so that we can change and we can actually live in a better society where everyone has achieved a spiritual advance and evoluted consciousness, because when we are connected with our higher selves, with our spiritual selves, the energy flows through every part of our body, and we don't get sick. There is no sickness. So it's a concept that people need to understand. And I believe that through all these years, if we go back 5,000 years ago, then we return here to this present time, we can see that society has changed. Society is more open, and all this knowledge is able to reach every person. So I think people is more prepared now to learn this path and to learn from themselves, being open to make this important change in consciousness, energetically and spiritually.
And you say the energy is important to make Reiki, and nowadays we are connected, but not in that way. We are connected like we are in this moment, like by internet. How is it work? Is affecting us, the network around us?
Yes, there is something called the electromagnetic contamination, and that's what we need to be grounded, because the energy is being transmitted in different waves, length waves. Yes, and this is an important question, because when we do Egyptian Reiki or Egyptian healing, traditional healing, we are using similar waves but on a different frequency, So, but we are manipulating energy so that you can actually, that's a good energy for you, not like the energy coming from your electronic devices, which can actually make a distortion in your energy field. So as you can see, the world is opening into a new world where the energy is flowing everywhere, every sort of energy. So we need to be able to cope with that amount of energy. That's why it is important to spend time in nature, to ground yourself, to do exercise, to eat balancedly, and working your energy field, because otherwise our physical body gets very polluted with all this amount of energy. So we need to learn to channel this energy, and a good way is learning from this healing system, the ancient Egyptian healing Reiki, which is actually help people to understand the energy field and how can actually ground yourself and release all that energy that is around you that sometimes can create blocks and disease.
Okay, so we have to understand and how it works to make it as a benefit for us, like an enemy. Okay.
Exactly.
So, Doctor, it was a pleasure to have you here. So, for all listeners, with this, we are ending this presentation today. With this, we give us a brief introduction to the world of the ancient Egyptians and their cultural legacy and history for today's modernity. In our next program, we will be completing part of the history and the myth of Isis Osiris. Is it correct? Isis?
Isis and Osiris, yes.
Osiris, okay. And the basis of healing and how magic plays an important role in the healing of ancient Egypt. For more information, you may visit Dr. Gamal's website. It's holistic-alternative-medicine.com.au. You may also find his online workshop of Egyptian Reiki in the Udemy website, Asian Egyptian Reiki Healing Course. Thank you, and see you in the same channel next week here in ekoradio. So,
my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. See you next week.
Goodbye.
Ekoradio.com, otra forma de hacer radio, una emisora diferente, con contenido especializado. Sigue toda nuestra programación en www.ekoradio.com. Ekoradio.com amplía sus fronteras digitales. Por eso te invitamos a que te suscribas a nuestro canal de YouTube, Ekoradio, en donde encontrarás los mejores programas, el mejor contenido y podrás escuchar nuestra señal online www.ekoradio.com, la vitrina del talento latino, la mejor música, el mejor contenido y los mejores programas en la mejor ekoradio, otra forma de hacer radio. Ey, ekoradio con K. Ekoradio.com, otra forma de hacer radio. Síguenos en nuestras redes sociales, en Twitter e Instagram como @ekoradio y en Facebook como ekoradio. Ekoradio, otra forma de hacer radio.